Oh, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rahul Kulkarni from Sarla Advantech Mumbai office. So thanks a lot for joining this webinar, and I hope everybody is keeping safe and staying at home, taking care of your near and dear ones. Uh, we'll be having a session on a new product called OPC Router. So before we go in detail, just to inform you that we have this webinar over a tool called GoToWebinar, which you already joined now. So as a question answers and other things are concerned, on your right hand side, you must be seeing your control panel. So where you can type in your questions during the seminar, and we'll be answering all those questions one by one at the end of the seminar. We'll be doing it in that way. I hope everyone is comfortable with that. So now I will introduce the team which is conducting this webinar. So my name is Rahul Kulkarni. I am from Sarla Advantech Private Limited. I am looking after solution designing and pre-sales activity at Sarla. Which is mainly a technical team which will be helping you out for the all the requirement and other things. Then we have Mr. Shinu Zakaria from our Sarla Bangalore office. He is our sales representative in India. He will be doing. Then we have a team from Indre in Germany, Mr. Thorsten and Mr. Jan. So both of them are there in this webinar. So as a beginning, Shinu will be sharing some of the Sarla India businesses and other things. Just a short presentation, and then we'll be having a detailed introduction about the OPC router product. And later on, Jan will be presenting the actually a live demo of this tool. Okay. So meanwhile, you can just so put your questions on the chat box provided, on the question section provided on the right hand control panel. Yeah. So I will hand over to Shinu now. So Shinu can begin the basic introduction, and then we'll go to further steps.
Yeah. Thanks, Rahul. Good afternoon, everyone. And thanks for joining us for the OPC Router webinar. I hope everyone is safe and healthy. And I will also like to extend my thanks to the Intrade team for organizing this webinar on such a short notice. So I think I will begin with with the company profile presentation. So I think most of you are aware about Sarla. So I will keep my presentation really short. So we at Sarla, we are an independent solution provider with over 20 years of experience in the manufacturing IT solution and service space, with vast experience on automation softwares and MES software and development and testing. So with around 400 plus Sarlites across the globe, and with 15 plus offices in 5 nations and 7 of them in India, and Mumbai, the head office, and other branch offices in Bangalore, Delhi, Pune, Chennai. So we serve across various verticals, right from pharma, chemical, energy, automotive, aerospace, infrastructure, etc. So with around 150 plus customers. So we are a part of the global ATS global group from 2018. Prior to that, we were a part of the Parek Marketing or Pidlite group, and we have been associated with leading solution providers from a very long time. G Digital, SAP, Kepware, and Vero. So we have around delivered around 2,500 plus projects, both in greenfield and brownfield projects across India and globally. So coming back to our services, so we and solutions, we give a complete set of services in the manufacturing IT space, right from MES, industrial IoT, data acquisition system, plant to business integration, computer system validation, SAP system, and plant information management system, industrial connectivity services and solutions. So our partnerships. So we have been associated with GE Digital for almost 18 plus years, with 3,000 plus installation and integration projects on various GE products like iFix and Simplicity SCADA, Historian, MES, and Web SCADA. And we have around 500 plus customers we have been supporting with their installation and support. The next partnership is with Kepware. We've been associated with Kepware for more than 8 plus years now, with 100 plus installation and integration project, and supplying and working with various partners and end users, providing connectivity solution on Kepware with various drivers and supporting around 400 plus customers across India. The other partnership is with Verum on the PASEX MES software. We have been associated with them from past 6 years, and we have been doing a lot of MES projects across India and various pharmaceutical verticals. And we have also associated with SAP on the manufacturing execution or MIF platform with 10 years experience and 20 plus projects executed in India. And our recent partnership has been with OPC Router. So we will go through the session now. And so probably Rahul, I think you can just continue, and then Thorsten and Jan will take over and continue with the presentation. And you can get in touch with us for any of the requirement coming days.
Yeah, sure. Thanks a lot, Shinu. So Rahul here again. So as Shinu said, we have this recent partnership with OPC Router. So we'll be giving you all the technical solution, configuration, and other things in India services. So whichever is your requirements and other things, we can work it out. So we have very good team here, technical team who is already trained on this product. From India, Germany, we had our multiple engineers who can execute the projects, also who can help you out to make the configurations, select the product, especially with the licensing and other things. So we can surely help you out. Okay, so now we'll go in a deep to learn more about the OPC router itself. So I'll be handing over my session to Thorsten. Thorsten is from our INRE in Germany. So he will be taking next few slides from here to give you the basic details about the OPC router. So hand it over to you, Thorsten.
Yeah, thank you very much. I hope you can hear me now, and I will share my PowerPoint. So it should work right now. Okay, so I'm especially thankful for two things today. First thing, of course, is to be with all of you in that webinar today. Thanks to Sala, thanks for having us. And the other thing is that I don't need to do the presentation in Hindi, because that really would be an issue for me. So two things that really make me happy today. I will give you a short overview over the main features and also the areas where OPC router can be used and can add value. Can you all see my screen? Because my colleague is texting me that he's not able to see the screen.
No, not yet.
Okay. Not sure what it is. Do I need to do anything special? Because
I will just reconnect you again.
okay. Yeah. I know what the issue is.
Okay.
But if you can reconnect me, that would be great, because I need to accept the sharing of my screen.
No, just hold on. I will just. Yeah.
Now it should
Yeah,
work.
Rostam, now we can see your screen. Yes.
Oh, perfect. Thank you very much. And thanks, Jan, for letting me know. I'm sorry for that issue. So I wanted to say, I just would like to give you a rough overview over the areas where you can use OPC Router, where it can add value to your communication projects. I think that's the more boring part, and the more exciting part will be after my slides. My colleague Jan will show a live demo on how to create connections and also connect to an SAP system, and show you how easy the software is. In the beginning, before I start to speak about OPC Router in general, I just want to make all of you aware, because I know that a lot of you are already using Kepware as an OPC server. An OPC Router is a complementary product to Kepware, so it works very well together with Kepware. And there is a pretty new case study, which is also on the Kepware or PDC website. If you follow that link, I think Sala will share the slides with you, so that you will get the link afterwards, and you can have a look at that case study, which explains a nice use case where Kepware and OPC Router are working together to collect data from 500 plastic molding machines through the Euromap 63 driver of Kepware, and then OPC Router is transferring these values, all these values, collecting these values, transferring these values, and pre-calculate the values before sending them to an MES solution to calculate an OE. So that's really an interesting read. But speaking specifically about OPC Router, so what it is and what it does. So OPC Router is, I would say, some kind of communication middleware, connecting different kinds of OT systems or automation systems and IT systems. So it doesn't matter if customers would like to connect their industrial printers or RFID systems or OPC systems, or if they would like to connect to SAP, cloud systems, databases, and so on. So what you can see on that screen right now is just a few of the available protocols and plugins that OPC Router can speak. There are SAP, for example, or all other ERP solutions. Connection is possible to different kind of databases, can be SQL-based databases and NoSQL databases like InfluxDB or MongoDB. There's also a native driver to connect to SAP HANA as a mass database, barcode readers, industrial printers, and so on and so on. And what that slide is showing is that it's not only about creating a connection between two systems, like for example between an OPC server and a database, but it's also possible to run whole processes using OPC Router. For example, a use case could be that a production of a product, a production order has been finished. So the PLC is having the information that the production has been finished, and it's sending that information, for example, to SAP or any other ERP solution. SAP then sends the information for a new production order to the PLCs. The PLCs give a handshake to SAP, like saying, thanks, I have received the information, so that the ERP system knows that the production order has been successfully transferred to the shop floor. When the production starts, for example, the PLC or the field devices send some information to a barcode printer. For example, in a packaging line, printing a barcode, including information about customer name, customer number, product number, a barcode, and so on. So when the PLC sends that information to a printer, it could be that there's an issue with the printer because it's running out of ribbon, running out of labels or paper or whatever, or there is maybe a failure in the connection, network connection to the printer. In this case, for example, also OPC Router could handle this situation by recognizing the printer is not available or the printer is running out of labels, and then when recognizing that, sending an email or a telegram message to the maintenance staff informing them that there's an issue, like connection failure, please fix it, or only 50 labels left, please add new labels, or ribbon only 20% left, please please fill ribbon. So there, and all these kinds of processes can run in parallel. So for example, it can be one process to have a communication between an OPC server or the field systems and an ERP solution, and at the same time, in parallel, there could be a communication between a printer and a cloud system, or between a barcode reader, an RFID system, and a telegram message. So everything can run at the same time in parallel. That's in general what OPC Router does. And to give you an idea of when we say databases or printers, how the connections or which kind of connections are available, it's always that there are several connections. So for example, databases, we are supporting more than, I think, 7 or 8 database types and some standard protocols like ODBC and OLEDB for all the databases we don't support with a native driver. But for example, for the printers, we have native drivers for Zebra printers, Domino printers, VideoJet, and Volker printers. We also have a plugin to support Windows printers, of course, and there's also a generic printer plugin which supports, for example, any other kind of printers that are not mentioned here. For example, Zato printers. They can be connected through the generic printer plugin. That's just giving you an idea, and that works for most of all the plugins like RFID. We are supporting Torque and Siemens and Harting systems and so on. Giving you an idea of how the software can be used and how easy it is to be used. There are, I think, in general, 4 elements when using the OPC Router software and creating data connections. One is there's a list of the available plugins, which means the available protocols which need to be licensed. So for every kind of connection, there needs to be purchased a license for a very reasonable or low price. And then there are special transfer objects. These transfer objects are used to create connections. They can be used as a data source or a data destination. So for example, I can send information from an OPC data source to a database as a destination, or I can send information from an MQTT system to an influx database. Then there are data connections. I will come to that a bit later, just drawing arrows of the tags that need to be transferred. And there are different kinds of triggers. Triggers means when the data transfer should happen. So there could be value-based triggers, time-based triggers, cron triggers, like every second Tuesday at 12 o'clock, please transfer the data from system A to system B. And the good thing, and I think one of the really key values of OPC Router is that you can create those kinds of connections using these tools just via drag and drop. So it's no scripting or special IT skills needed. You can create the connections and data exchange between your systems via drag and drop. You don't need to be an automation specialist, and you also don't need to be an IT specialist. I think you will see that later when Jan will do the live demo. So you have that plugin list, which can be extended step by step. So we have a lot of customers that only start with 2 plugins, like transferring data from OPC to a database, and after that they also would like to connect their SAP system and then their SAP HANA database, and then maybe a cloud system and a printer. And so the number of plugins is growing. We are having about 3 to 4 releases each year, and each release will at least feature 1 new plugin. So the list of available connections and plugins is growing, and already we have more than 35 available plugins, which already enable to really connect to almost every IT or OT system. When starting a new OPC Router project or new connection for data transfer, there can be made some individual settings, like for example the cycle time of the data transfer. In this case it would be 50 milliseconds. Every 50 milliseconds there could be a data transfer. But you also can, for example, decide how long events should be stored, how long transferred values should be stored in the internal database. You also can define to receive an email notification each day or each week about the transfers, and maybe also transfer issues and transfer states. And you can decide which kind of information you would like to have in that monitoring email, like errors, warnings, and so on. That should be inside of that monitoring email. But coming now to the user interface of OPC Router, and I think that the main power of the software. So on the right side, you can see all the available plugins for data sources and data destinations. And scrolling a bit down, you will find all the available triggers. So what you need to do, for example, that's a very, very basic connection, very, very simple, because it's only transferring 1 value at a time. In that case, for example, if you would like to transfer a temperature value from an OPC data source, in that case from a CAP server, to another OPC data source or a database, for example, you just need to drag the data source icon from here and drop it here. So you will automatically have that box here, and if you double click on that box, you can automatically browse all the available tags in your OPC server. So you can choose, for example, then that the temperature tag, or several tags, of course, at the same time, like a temperature value, a timestamp, username, or whatever should go with that value. So you choose your tag by just double clicking on that box. Then you select your data destination, so where the data should go. You could choose between different kind of databases, like, for example, Microsoft SQL Server or Oracle or whatever. So you choose your data destination, drag it and drop it here, double click on it, and you can automatically also browse the available variables and tags of that database or data destination. And you can choose, in that case, also a tag where the temperature value should go to. And the only thing after that you need to do is to draw an arrow from that temperature tag to that tag, which means that that value will be transferred to that variable. With one connection, it doesn't, with only one tag, it maybe doesn't make much sense. But if you, for example, transfer 15, 20 values or values at the same time, then you need to decide which value should go to which, from which tag to which variable. So, and that makes things really easy also in an overview. So it's really dragging and dropping, drawing that arrow, double clicking, choosing the tags by just clicking, and then you only need to define a trigger. For example, in this case, a time-based trigger, which means every 5 seconds or every 50 milliseconds or whatever you decide, this value will be transferred to this tag. And that's it. It's really that simple. Of course, you can do more complex data transfers and also can execute processes and logics using OPC Router. So this is a very, very basic and simple example. What is important to know is that most customers, of course, only don't have one connection. They have several kinds of connections, transferring several kinds of data at the same time between different systems. And if you change one of these connections, for example, you change a tag name or whatever in one connection, you only need to reactivate that single connection, so that you don't need to deploy the whole OPC router, which would also deploy all the other connections. You only need to set this change productive. All the other data transfers will continue to run without any interruption at the same time you are making changes. What's also interesting is that there's a powerful monitoring feature inside, which means you can see your connection here, transferring a system time as a timestamp, temperature value, and a constant value like a source number. At the same time, this will be triggered every 3000 milliseconds to a database. So that's the use case here. Also, a still very basic and simple kind of data transfer. With a monitoring tool, you can always see if the data transfers have been successful, because then they are a green dot. If there would be an issue, there would be a red dot. And what you can do is, of course, you can zoom in and zoom out into that grid over above the connection, so that you can see the time, you can see the color of the dots, and you also can see how long the data transfer took. So if, for example, I'm interested in, I can see that all these data transfers took about 5 or 10 milliseconds, but there's one that took almost 90 milliseconds. So maybe I'm interested in to learn why this took longer than all the others. So I might click on that green one, and I will see the actual values that have been transferred at that time down below. And maybe that gives me an idea why the data transfer has been a bit deferred here and maybe took a bit longer. Also, if there would be a red dot because there has been a communication issue, I can click on the red dot, I would see the actual values, and I also would see an error message and about the object that had that issue. So for example, if the connection to the database should fail because of a network failure, and there would be a red dot, you click on that red dot, and you would see a red frame around the database object here, which tells you, the issue has been with the database connection. And then there also would be an error message, which tells you that the connection has failed or whatever, so that you really get specific information on what the problem is and how to resolve it as quick as possible. So very, very, very powerful in monitoring all your data transfers and connections. What's also interesting, of course, is using templates and instances for connections. So for example, if you are working in a plant having several production lines, they are structured all the same way, they're using the same structure in the PLCs, you only need to create a connection one time for all your PLCs, one time like this, and then you can export this information into a CSV or Excel file. So you don't need to have an Excel installation on the server, but you can use Excel. And this is coming with the OPC router. and you can export that connection and that structure here. And then you can fill in the information for all the other PLCs that are structured the same way in that CSV or Excel file. And then you can re-import that Excel file into OPC Router, and you will automatically get hundreds of instances of this template. So you can create several hundreds or thousands connections within only a few minutes by using the import and export function and creating a template and instances on that. So pretty simple and easy to do. Coming to a bit more complex scenario, it's still not very complex, but it might show what OPC Router is able to do and what kind of logic and processes you can do using OPC Router. So this use case is sending out an email if there should be a temperature issue. So if the temperature is above 55 degrees or is greater or equal than 55 degrees, then this email should be sent. It should have some standard text and some real-time values included in that email, like the asset number, the temperature, and the alarm time. So you define that text, and what you can see here is there's some kind of logic included, which means that depending on the value that will be transferred to a translation database in between, OPC Router can decide which distribution list should receive that email. So for example, if it's for production line number 1, there would be maybe John receiving that email. So this is all defined in that translation table here, which can be put in between. And if it's production line 2, it might be somebody else receiving that email. You also can, for example, include some escalation mechanisms, like if that alarm is active for more than 5 minutes, then please send the email again to somebody else, like the head of maintenance. So depending on the value that is coming from the field, the translation database includes the information to which recipients this email should be sent. And if you look at the trigger, this also includes some logic, because it doesn't make sense to send out that email every second or every 50 milliseconds. It's okay to send that email out only once when there's only one alarm or one issue. And in this case, this trigger is defined like that email will be sent if the temperature is greater or equal than 55 degrees. And the email will only be sent out once again when the trigger has been resetted by a temperature which is equal or less than 53 degrees again. So the email will be sent out once, and the temperature must be below 53 degrees and then go up to more than 55 degrees again until this email will be sent out once again. And you also can, for example, attach photos or something like this to an email, like taking a picture of if you have a camera at the production line, taking a picture of the product or whatever, or the machine state at that time. So this should just explain what kind of logics and processes can be just created mainly by drag and drop very easily. And of course, you can also use Telegram messaging to send out alarms and information. And this also works in both directions. So it could be that you send out an information to via Telegram messenger from OPC Router because there's an alarm, because the temperature is too high. So you send out a Telegram message to a maintenance guy telling him, oh, the temperature is 56.7 degrees at the moment. But it also can be, as said, used in both directions. So for example, the maintenance personnel could acknowledge an alarm by sending a command back through the Telegram message and through the OPC router, maybe to an HMI system or whatever, or a PLC, whatever might be connected on the other side. And it also can be used proactively. So, for example, a head of production is interested in the OEE for production line number 12. Then he can send a specific command from his smart device, from a smartphone or from his tablet to OPC router, asking for the OEE of production line number 12. And OPC router will collect the needed information and send him the calculated OEE back to his smart device. So it's very, very easy to use and powerful at that time. Also, when, for example, creating or connecting to printers, and you are not using the label designer of the printer company, you can also use an included design module for labels, which is included in OPC router or in the printer plugin, where you can define the size of the label and which kind of information should be put on the label. Should it be in text? Should it be as a number? Should it be as a barcode? And you can define your own labels and send that information to the printer. Yeah, when we spoke about exporting and exporting data to create templates and instances, in general, all information included in an OPC router project can be imported and exported. So, for example, you can work on a new connection on your PC, and you just export that connection, send it via email to a colleague, and that colleague can import that connection and would automatically have that new connection included in his running OPC router project. So you can export and import single connections. You also can import/export single plugins, but you also can, of course, import and export whole projects to transfer it maybe from one site to another site, or from one server to another server. So also pretty easy to handle. Coming to SAP, I think some of you are also SAP customers, SAP users. There is a specific SAP plugin for OPC router, so we can connect also to any other ERP system. For all the other ERP systems, we would use web services to connect. For SAP, there is a native plugin which is using native SAP protocols. For example, remote function calls means RFC, BAPI, or IDOCT as native communication language of SAP. And it's an officially certified plugin. So it's officially certified from SAP, because this is mostly one of the first questions, if it's officially certified. Yes, it is. And there are some values for SAP customers in general. So if you're not having a license for SAP MII, then you don't need to buy it, because OPC router doesn't need SAP MII or SAP Pico to communicate with SAP. So you can save license costs here. There's a powerful graphical monitoring and diagnosing tool, which I've already showed you on a screenshot. There's a very easy to use user interface, so it's pretty simple to transfer data to or from SAP systems, just doing this via drag and drop. There's a comfortable handshaking, so giving information back to the ERP system that the data successfully has been transferred. Bidirectional communication is pretty easy, so sending data to SAP, reading data out of SAP. There's a redundancy option available for OPC router. Not sure if that's possible with SAP, and I'm also not sure about the cost for that. Data can be pre-calculated and extended with data from other data sources like timestamps or an MES database or an HMI or whatever. And it can be collected data out of different data sources and can be exchanged directly with SAP in one data transfer. And in comparison with CAP server X, also OPC router enables you to use more than 128 devices in communication with SAP Pico in parallel. So several very, very valuable additional features and much more comfort using OPC router. And how such a connection will look like will be shown by my colleague. He will show it in a live demo. This is just to show you some of the screens you will see. So setting up an SAP system connection, you of course need to enter a username and a password, and you need to connect to an existing SAP system, choosing the client protocol, should it be RFC, BARP, or IDOC for the communication. And then you simply have your SAP graphical object over here in the transfer object space, and you can decide, for example, to communicate via RFC, BARP, or IDOC. You can drag and drop it here, double click on it. In that case, it's an RFC object, double click on that. You will automatically see the available remote function calls, and clicking on that, you can also browse all the available variables here. And by just clicking the checkboxes, you can select the tags that you would need for your data transfer. So pretty simple to do. And such an OPC, such an SAP connection could look, for example, like this, including the monitoring function. So some data is coming from an OPC data source, delivering some information about the order number and the quantity of the finished goods to SAP. And at the same time, SAP can also communicate with a warehouse system or another database, booking the used raw materials out of the warehouse and adding the finished goods to the warehouse at the same time. So very simple to create. And this would be the same to connect with all the other kinds of ERP solutions like Info, Microsoft Dynamics, and so on. We, in that case, as said, we would use SOAP REST, SOAP Web Services to connect, and it would look, it will look the same. In that case, it's transferring information from an ERP system through a JSON document into a script. So it's just one example how this could look like. And I think this is my last slide. So I hope it was not too boring for you, because now we will start with a live presentation. The last slide is just showing that if you're a Kepware user and you need redundancy with Kepware, the Kepware redundancy is working like you have a primary system and you have a secondary system, and then you have a third instance of Kepware which is monitoring the primary and the secondary system. So this third system automatically becomes the single point of failure as soon as this third instance monitoring these two systems will fail. As soon as this fails, there's no redundancy anymore. So for areas where you really need higher availability, it could make sense to bundle Kepware and OPC router and set up a complete whole redundant system. In this case, having a primary Kepware Kep server X and a secondary Kep server X connected to a primary OPC router and a secondary OPC router. The secondary OPC router will monitor the primary OPC router. So for example, if the primary OPC router should fail, the secondary OPC router will take over and can still communicate with the primary Kep server. If the primary Kep server should fail, then the OPC router would recognize that and would communicate with a secondary Kep server. So this delivers and offers a much higher amount of availability in the end. So for business critical applications, for example, batch processes, where you need to collect all the data that exists between the creation of one batch you cannot afford to miss any data point, because that would mean that you're not allowed to use that batch anymore, and you need to trash the whole production. It could make sense to set up that kind of system. Just as a quick information at the end. And that's it from my side as an introduction to OPC Router. And I would now like to hand over to my colleague Jan, who will show you how to use the software in a live demo.
Yes. So thanks a lot, Thorsten, for this elaborative presentation about the OPC router. There are a lot of plugins and other things are clear. So now I'll be requesting Jan to start presenting the live demo. So maybe Jan, you can now share your screen and show the live demo to us.
Yes, okay, so yeah, first of all, hello to everyone. Yeah, the first question is, can everybody see my screen? You should see the OPC router now.
I can see it.
All right, so push the button, okay. Yeah, as I said, what you see now is the OPC router configuration interface. Generally, the software is split into two functionalities. First of all, you have the configuration here, where you set up all the systems that you want to communicate with, as well as build the connections, so the transfer or exchange of data. And once you have done that, you, as we'll see later, you activate a connection, and then it's passed to the runtime. And the runtime that is executing the transfer is running as a Windows service. So it's split into a configuration running under the Windows user that you are logged onto the system, and the runtime running as a Windows service. And as you have seen on the slides earlier, it basically, you have some general administration functionality on top here, but generally we're looking at the handling of OPC router now. So when using the OPC router, you have these icons here on the very left side. You go through them in order to create connections, which we will do now. You further have a list of all plugins available. This middle section is your working area. And on the right hand, as Thorsten showed earlier, you have all the transfer objects that you use in order to build a connection, as well as the triggers that, the event that finally fires or executes a connection. So that's the basic architecture. I will start from beginning. So we will do three different kinds of connections. The first one is as a simple introduction, is we transfer data from an OPC server to a database. The second one will be we deal with CSV files. So we will write data from an OPC server to a CSV file and then read it out and transfer it back to an OPC server into a database. And finally, I will show you an example of how the SAP plugin can be used. So I start the very first thing. What you do is when you want to communicate with a system, in database or UPC UA server, you have to choose the plugin here. And when you double click it, there's always everything organized in tabs here in OPC Router. As you can see, I already have set up two different OPC servers running on my local machine. So if you can add as many as you need. The first one the one we're using is the one here on top. So if I double click this one, another dialog opens, and you provide the necessary information in order to communicate with that remote system. So in this case, you always have a working name that you use to build connections in OPC Router. Of course, you need to specify the endpoint URL when using a UA server. The sample rate that usually the OPC client passes to the server. And then the general information that an OPC UA server after specification needs. So you can specify a user and password. I don't have that. I enabled anonymous logon to Kepware OPC server. And then you can specify the encryption mode. So everything that is offered by Kepware is supported by OPC Router 2, I should think. So, and once leaving redundancy concept, we skip that one. That's what Thorsten explained in the last slide. But when you provide all the information, you can just check the connection to the OPC server, and then you get a feedback if it's working or not. And next step, we want to transfer data to a database. On my local machine, I have a Microsoft SQL Server Express running, but I need to supply that information to the OPC router as well. So I can click here, double click on an entry. For example, here I have a MS SQL server with a training DB. So you basically give the host name, the database name, and then authentication. In this case, I'm using Windows authentication, but it can be a database user too. So, and then the other one that I'm using here is InRayDB, for example, on my local machine. I just say check connection, and then at some point you have it. And that would be the only thing for our example. So we are now able to actually build a connection. And that is the next icon on the very left here, which on mouse over says connections. So I choose that one. And then it gives you the menu here, connections. You usually organize all your connections in folders just to have a structure. And we do that too. So I just begin, say, right click, new folder, and I see OPC, to database, just for the purpose of this webinar. And within those folders, you can create connections using either those icons up here or right click, for example, say new connection. And I just say OPC read, and then I have the name of connection. And as soon as I hit enter, a new tab is opened. And in this, in this working section is where you actually build the connection by drag and drop. So when I want to read from an OPC server, I need to have an OPC transfer object. So from the list of transfer objects, I choose an OPC transfer object, and I want to transfer it to a database. So I choose a database transfer object. I configure an transfer object by double click, and then the respective dialog for that object opens, and I have to specify the OPC server. I'm using my Kepware on my local machine. Then I can use the text browser button down here in order to browse the OPC server. So I'm having this simulation examples from Kepware. I guess you're familiar with them. I can just open the tag groups to get to the tag level, and then I can just double click on an OPC tag here, and it's then added here on the left hand in this section. And then I double click on two others, and I can choose, basically you can choose as many as you want, so there's no limitation. And once I have that, I have a list of items. So when I say okay, those 3 items are here depicted. Then I need to double click on my database. I'm using the InRay database. You have different types of database functionalities. The first very simple one is an insert, because I want to transfer data to a database. Then I have to choose my table. I set up some test data table here. In return, it gives me a list of all available columns. So I choose the ones I need. I want to use it UTC timestamp too. There's no validity check, and that's it. So now I'm able to draw connection lines. I can just connect this ramp, one OPC item to the ramp column of the table. and then it draws the connections for me. UTC timestamp, you can either use the one from the OPC server, if you mark it here, or there's one supplied in variables when using OPC Router. So system time UTC, if I want to have the UTC timestamp in a database, I can just choose this. So this would be one example to do it. You basically only need one transfer object for the most simple one, but we're using 3 now here. And what I'm still need to do is I need some sort of trigger. So there are many different triggers. I will just use, in this case, a data change trigger. So I will just say that once there's a counter changing, let's say RAM2, I know this one is changing permanently. Once this one changes, and I do that each data change, I want this connection to be triggered. So this would be a first example how to do it. You can see the blue numbers here, which gives you the sequence of execution for each transfer object. So first of all, the OPC values are red. Then the variable here is initialized by OPC Router, and then in the next step, in step 4, the data is transferred to a database. So the logic is from left to right and top bottom. You can have as many transfer objects and connection lines as you want. If I, for example, had another database transfer object, then it would be number 5. If I take it up here, it's the first one. So that's how you control the data flow logic in a connection. Well, having done that, I can either use the shortcut up here, which is a shortcut to the next icon on my left side here. As I said, this connection is built but not productive. So when I go here, OPC Router sees, okay, I have a new connection here. So I have to go and say, go productive. Once I've done that, okay, my system wasn't started, so I need a restart. But once I activate the connection, there's the last one, this on the left hand, the status. So it should at some point, this connection, it's now initializing, connecting to the OPC server, using subscription for the trigger OPC tag. So it's subscribing to the OPC server. And once this RAM2 item changes, the OPC router is informed via callback, and the connection is triggered and executed. So my local machine is a laptop, so it's a little slow, but now you see the dot, it's initializing. So this is the way by doing is by subscription. We can also poll or use a time trigger. So at some point it is initialized. And now it is, and the RAM2 value changes quite frequently, and each time it changes, a transfer is done. So in this graphic up here, you have the time and the process time of the connection on the y-axis. Green is very good, then you know, okay, I'm fine. I can just only, for example, if you click on one execution point of time up here, then down here you see all the values that were transferred to that point of time. Usually you just look at it and then you're fine. But sometimes it's more important when you get an email, or you can receive an email for a connection when there occurs an error. And then you go in here and you see that where the problem occurs. If the database instance, for example, is a problem, then this would be a red surrounded and you have a red dot up here. So it's very important when you make error analysis. So that's what it's usually used for. So if I switch back to live modus, then I see the current time. And on my local machine, I have this database, Microsoft database server. So in my test data table, I can now select top 1000 and I see that the data is coming in here. So that's a basic example, just to give you an overview how what the handling is like when using OPC Router. So now I go back to connections and I will deactivate it. It's not deactivated in the runtime, so I need to go back here to the activation mode, say go productive. And now, since it was executed already, or past the runtime, we don't need to restart the whole service, but only the connection. So now this connection is disabled. Yeah, that is the first example. Very basic one. The next one we use is CSV files. So I will go again to my connection menu entry, say right click, and I make a new folder again, say file transfer. Within that file transfer, I want to first read data, write it to a CSV file, and in another connection, read out the data and pass it to, let's say, a database stored procedure, not only an insert and an OPC server, for example. So the first connection is CSV write. And again, I have to read some data from an OPC server. So I'll quickly choose some here. In this case, I want to have my machine. Go back to top. And I need some production data that I want to have. So the current amount, current scrap, and temperature are the values I want to transfer. And I choose again from my other connections. So you can always, this is also nice to know, from other, you can copy paste everything you want and also elements from other connections. So I'm using this system time UTC again. I need the next transfer object when I want to write a file. First of all, I need to create a CSV. OPC Router comes with different kind of text replacement handling. First of all, this text replace is very nice. You can just use variables within a certain text, and during runtime they are replaced by the actual text and then sent to the destinations. We use that very often for labels when sending to a printer, for example. So this text replace is very nice. The CSV parser that we will use to create or read CSV files is the one that is, I think, for free included, but also JSON and XML. So you can create and read JSON data. You have a parser using JSON parse. So there's a lot of functionality that you can use in order to read and write JSON documents without the need to write a parser in some programming language, as well as XML with XPath. So you can create and read from XML documents. And I think they're all included, so they are very helpful. And the one we chose and to show you here is the CSV. So I create a CSV document by using the CSV transfer object. So I say my delimiter, I want to have a delimited CSV, not fixed width. I do have a header maybe at line 1, and the data starts then at line 2. My decimal value, depending on the culture you're in, we're using this comma, or whatever it is called in English. So, and this is my delimiter here. And then I need to say what columns I want to have in my CSV file. So we have the good parts and bad parts. We have temperature, which is kind of double, and in this case the UTC timestamp. So when I have it, I've defined the structure of my CSV file. I can choose the date format of the database or whatever I want to use. That's depends on where you use it. So, but that should be fine now. So I fill the data as I did it before. I'm not on scrap now. The temperature goes to temperature and amount to amount, and I want a UTC timestamp. So now this data is filled in and has created a document. And we use this, you see the file object. We have network file access. This is very important because it's authenticating by credentials. So the OPC router service does not need to run in the user context that has actually writing or reading rights to that remote network path, but you can specify user and password here. So there's very often data transfer in projects. So, and then at some point we decided to do it to add file objects as well as network access. Network access enables you to transfer data via SMB or FTP, also encrypted. But in this example, I just take my local file and a local file operation on my machine. So I write a file by double clicking and say, okay, it's a static path. Oh, it's in German, sorry. So I choose a destination, which is the folder on my C drive, webinar. Existing file actions, I just say overwrite, whatever. The file name, I specify static2. So this is production data CSV now. And text in Unicode coded. So now this should be everything. So let's say a trigger, we choose time as an example. So every 3 seconds, the values from the OPC server are read, written into the CSV format and written to the hard drive, which will then be in here in webinar. The next connection will be reading that file. So I say just quickly make that CSV read. So I need to make a read object, but I don't use a transfer object, but also at the same time a trigger. So the logic is every time a file is written to my hard drive, this object reads it and transfers it. So not only a file read, but a file read combined as a trigger. So I specify again the destination. I don't include subdirectories here. File pattern would be all files with the suffix CSV. I read text again because I write text. Then I have some moving options. So in case it's successfully transferred, not read, transferred, it puts it into a success folder. If not, into an error folder. And I put the UTC timestamp to the file name to identify it. So this should be it. So a file is read once it's written to that destination. Now I need again my CSV. Okay. And I use the delimiter again. This should be all the same. Yeah. And again, I have, I think, amount and scrap and temperature as the column names. Of course, UTC timestamp. You don't have to use them all. If you don't want to don't use them, you don't have to specify them. Yeah, but that should be it. So now I want to read the file content, and then it parses the CSV as an array output. In this case, I just have one line, so it's not an array, but it could be many data rows. And for example, I want to put it here. I specify a stored procedure. This data system is not known, but yeah, just a second. I can also use stored procedures, which is in practice very helpful because you can add logic. So I can use a database, for example, put amount here, grab the temperature and UTC timestamp. But as said earlier, it doesn't matter how many transfer objects you use. I can also use any OPC server. So target amount maybe and temperature. And I can use the data that I want. I don't have to use all of it, of course. So that would be the connections. So now I have to activate them again. So I go here and say go productive. And at some point, it starts writing files. So in my status, I see they're both successful. So all the files are written to this destination. The file trigger reads it and puts them all in the success folder. If there were errors, there would be an error folder as well. And here in the read, you see, or on the right, you see the data flow again and the context or the content. Same here. And of course, this is also all JSON or CSV files are, or basically every transfer object is able to handle arrays and complex data. So this is another example with some more transfer objects and how the OPC router is used. So if there are no questions, I just continue. The last one would be the SAP plugin. As Thorsten said, if we're not using REST or SOAP, we have some native functionality when communicating with SAP. So yeah, first of all, you specify the SAP system. Basically, it's you define the version of the SAP system. You either use the old RFC protocol or the newer NetWeaver protocol. You need to get some data from the administrator from SAP, as well as security information. Can also be encrypted, the communication, or it can be a load balancer when communicating to a load balancing system. But basically, it's you use supply the information that the SAP administrator gives you according to the handbook, or can also refer to us if there are any questions. Once you have typed in that data, you can use three different kinds of, several kinds of communicating with SAP. First of all, direct access to SAP HANA. You use a simple database transfer object, but that one is using a SAP HANA database, and you have the basic functionality that a relational database system offers. So in this case, I have a temperature table here on my SAP HANA. You can read and write data to it. We have SOAP and REST, as I said, and the classic way is RFC. So on the right hand, we have RFC as it's bidirectional and synchronous communication. So SAP knows they can program their RFC and trigger us, and at the same time give us information. And then we answer that we received information, was successfully or not. So it's synchronous communication and can be repeated in case of errors. BAPI is synchronous, but only one way. We can only access SAP, and IDOC is asynchronous text file-based communication, but also in both directions. So accordingly, we do have triggers down here for SAP for RFC and IDOC. Most often, it's just when I want to send data to SAP, what I get is when I have the SAP system, I choose it, then I get a function group from the programmer. And within that function group, I have, in this case, I think I have only one. So, but you have a list of functions. Yeah, okay, I have only one. Once you choose a function, it gives you all the parameters available. You choose from them, and that's basically it. It can be a flat hierarchy or tables, so whole table data with multiple columns. So there shouldn't be any restrictions. And at the same time, now I'm reading from an OPC server. Maybe I can just show it quickly. Call a product ID on SAP side for this function, and in return it gives me information to that product ID, which then I can forward to an MES application or whatever, OPC server again, doesn't matter. But interesting is here and I think that's most often used, if not REST and SOAP, the RFC trigger is you specify an SAP system, you have a program ID in the gateway that you get from the administrator, and you call a function here. Once the OPC service starts, our OPC router registers as an SAP system on the destination SAP system. And now the RFC programmers, the SAP programmers, can call us by using this function and the input and output specified parameters. So at the same time, they trigger us and send us data. So that's why RFC communication is used so often. Programmers on SAP side, they know how to call an RFC function and all that. So that's the most valuable thing and most used, I guess. So, and when I'm, if I started this now here, it would just start it, and then it's the same again all over as always. You have data between the transfer object depicted in a graph and the status. So I have too many connections for a demo system. So but at some point it will here start communicating, and then you see I'm reading OPC, call the function, and return I get information and write it to a database. So yes, that would be all of the live demo. So in case, well, I guess we can continue with the question answer part now. So thanks a lot.
Yes, thanks a lot, Jan, for this detailed demonstration of our product. There are quite a lot of questions came up while you were presenting, and before that the Thorsten when he was presenting. So maybe we can go with one by one all the questions. I've filtered out some of the questions because some of got answered while you were demonstrating. I will choose the things which are not probably got answered. So maybe Jan and Thorsten, you can also contribute in answering those questions. Hope this is fine. So the one of the question which came up is, can the data transfer be trigger based rather than time based? So I guess this whole system is trigger based also, and as it is demonstrated, so we can create a multiple triggers in it.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and there was another question came up, which is like, is there any option for bulk configuration? So yeah, maybe Jan, you can put some highlight on it for the bulk configuration of when there are more number of devices or more number of tags to be configured.
Yeah, well, what we use for that is templates actually. For example, I do have some sort of template here, and it has variables here. So from this template, you can create hundreds or thousands of instances, so connections. And this is done by, you create an instance by right-click, so then you get a dialog and you type in all the variables. So first of all, you choose this one, you give it a name, and then a destination where to put it, or put it in root, and then you fill all the variables here by hand and say, okay, and you. But the most common way is I have this template, right-click, say, create multiple instances. And this one is, just a second. Yeah. This is, I can type in here the variables as well, or I save them to my hard drive and then do it in Microsoft Excel and then re-import the Microsoft Excel file. So for each line here in the Excel file, there's generated one connection. That would be the second way. Or finally, you can use the local database system of the OPC router. This is create dynamic instances. So this is very often used when you configure the OPC server cap server X by REST. At the same time, there are inserts made to a certain table on our side, and the OPC router automatically generates connections from all entries in that table. So that is the only thing I can think of when talking about bulk configuration.
Bulk data configuration can be achieved somehow. There was one interesting question came up, like whenever there are any errors while configuration, while data transfer. So is there any local buffer available? The question came up.
There will be in. I'm not sure, but during this day, that's the official schedule, there will be a transfer object for store and forward. So each data that you want to transfer from one source to another will be buffered in case of errors and then retransferred. So store and forward functionality will be implemented at some point this year. But at the moment, we have some solution. I did it. I store all the information into a database. It's a transfer table, so all relevant information that needs stored and so on forward. And then I need that table to actually transfer data. And once there's an error, it just stops until it works again, and then continues through all the lines in the table. Manual store and forward at the moment, what we use.
Another question was, can we send SMS? So I think we have the provision for this Telegram messaging, so via which it can be achieved. Telegram messages can be generated.
Yes, or you use email, and then you translate email to SMS.
Exactly. Okay.
Yeah.
There is another question was, what is the minimum data refresh time for real-time data sources, which can be achieved practically?
I don't think it depends on the system. When the source and destination system allow high frequency data transfer, then it's no problem. It depends on what you're using, but there are generally no limitations. When talking about OPC UA, you will have 50 milliseconds, for example, technically, but other than that, it's just, there's no limitation.
Yeah, I think it can be 5 milliseconds or something like this, but it of course depends on the server power, of the performance of the network, performance of the connected devices and everything.
Yeah.
But from our side, there's no limitation.
Exactly. Yeah. Then there are another question coming up, that can we generate reports using OPC router?
I don't know. Maybe.
In
Well,
Excel, we can dump the data and arrange it.
well, you
I
can.
would say OPC Router is not a report generator, but of course you
Well,
can
correct.
export data into existing Excel or CSV sheets and
Yeah.
fill the existing sheets with data. That's possible.
Yeah. So all transferred values over a certain period can be exported for a specific connection. They're stored in a local database, but that's an Excel file. Then here, for example, I can see all the transfers from here to here, and I can export the view. That's something in CSV in this case. But yeah, I guess that's it.
And then there are a couple of questions came related with the cost and other things. So this maybe Shinu and me, like India team will can share the details with you all separately. So what is the licensing and other things? This can be shared. Also,
Yes,
we can give you the
licensing
details
is
to
easy.
who are all participants, speakers, and
No. Pricing
so
is
those
something that you can do, and I think licensing is pretty easy. It's like Kepware, it's a server license, and you need to buy, and you can use the software on one single server for as much connections and users and connected devices as you like. So there's no limitation, and the price depends on the chosen plugins, and yeah, that's it.
Yeah. And apart from that, there are a couple of questions I can combine those questions. Mainly those were related with the performance, like how much is limitations and other things, how much is latency and things are involved. So I think basically it depends on the performance of the servers and the machines, basically, and there's no theoretical limit as such, I guess.
No, there's no. Unfortunately, we don't
No.
have any official values, but we have customers that are connecting several hundred PLCs, and each PLC is transferring in average 10 tags a second. So these are several tens of thousands of tags transferred in a second, and this is not a performance issue.
Okay, and another one question came up, like, can we use it around the firewall? Like, if we can, we need to pass it through the multiple networks, and there are firewalls in between. So,
Well, yes.
yes, yeah, should be possible.
Yeah, absolutely. OPC UA is possible. DA would be a problem, for example, but generally, yes.
There are some questions related with, can we have a specific plugin for PLCs or other things? But I think no, because we are not directly communicating with the PLCs here. So
Correct.
for that, we have the Kepware. So basically, Kepware will be communicating with the PLC specific driver. So there are no drivers in the OPC router because it's a complementary product to the Kepware.
Well,
Exactly.
yes,
The
except
only
for
PLCs we can
Heidenheim.
connect is called the PLCs that already offer an OPC server on the PLC, like a Siemens 7-1500 with an OPC module on it. Then we can directly communicate with the PLC.
And Heidenheim. Those PLCs we support as well for tool machines. So
Yeah.
this TCP-based
And
communication.
Sorry. There's one interesting question coming up that do we have a runtime version of it? Like we develop it at one place and we can only deploy only the runtime or the running version at a customer place. So this configuration and things will not be there. If such provision is there or in future it is there?
Not really. You can export a project and then import it again on the destination system at the customer side. But that's it.
Okay.
Was the question more about the licensing? So if there's some kind of development license and some kind of runtime license, or
Okay.
what was the question?
The question was typically like, so is there any only the runtime deployment instance? So you develop everything at our office, like at engineering office, everything, and you just create one file, which is just a runtime file, and that can be installed at customer place. So there will not be any configuration or anything there. So it is just like blindly at the backend it is running.
Not directly, no. But you can program it on your side, export the file, import it on customer side, and activate the connections, the new ones. But it's still not only a runtime version, it's a full version on customer side too.
Correct.
So if this is, for example, for a system integrator, I would do it like this. I would download the demo version of OPC Router, which enables me to create all the connections I like. And then I can export that data. So that demo version is free. And I export that data and send it to a customer. And the customer would need to buy a license if he runs OPC Router productive.
Yeah, that would work.
So for system integrators, there's a demo version which is free and fully functional. Only limitation is 2 hours of runtime mode. So every 2 hours you need to restart the service of the software to transfer values. But you have all the time to develop your connections, export them, send them to the customer, and the customer needs to buy a license.
Exactly. Same thing coming up. The other questions was like whether the demo version is available. So of course there is a demo version of 2 hours similar to Capeware. It is available. So we can provide these links and other things to you also, how to download the software, and we can guide you. We have there are questions regarding the references and other thing. Of course, we have a lot of references installation around the globe, so those we can do it. Yeah, and we'll be sharing with you all the download links and other things, as I said. Sure. So that's it. I summarized some of the questions. It may not cover each and every question which are, because there are a lot of questions, and maybe I merged some of them. So for more details, of course, in India, Sarla is available. So Shinu, me, Pooja, there are a lot of people, and contact number we'll be sharing with you. So you can write it to us. We can also loop in Thorsten, Jan for any technical support also for that case. And we can help you out by selecting a product, trainings, or even the purchase cycle, and if any POC things to be done. So this we can do it easily. So I think that's it from our side. And I take this opportunity to thanks everyone, especially thanks to Thorsten, Jan for presenting this all the details of OPC Router, giving us a live demo. Thanks to Shinu and our sales person. And I thank you everyone who has attended this webinar. I hope we'll work together in near future. There we'll be sharing all the details with you for product specific things. Thanks a lot for this. Thank you everyone.
Thank you also. Have a good day.
Yeah, so we'll also share the recording also with you.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks. Bye.
Thanks a lot, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.